are not all the same. Some support fanaticism, others don't. And then finally, you contend that the teachings of moderate religion are an open invitation to extremism. Well, that is not true of the teachings of Christ. I can't speak for other religions. But what about the moderate teaching of atheism? I've sat beside a young girl of 13 in the GDR who's just been told as the brightest child in the school that she cannot have any more education since she's not prepared to swear public allegiance to the atheistic state. I would call that intellectual murder, and it was committed many times in the name of atheism. But according to you, it's far worse than bulldozing buildings, but you say there's not the smallest evidence that atheists do such things. But there is. But perhaps I've misunderstood you.
You did.
You want to take a moment?
Well, I'm very happy to give up on the next one
Which would you prefer?
I'm very happy. I'd like Richard to choose what he wants to do, because I've made some strong statements.
In The God Delusion, I very deliberately made very little of all the individual evils of religion. I mentioned them occasionally, but I didn't go on about the Crusades, the conquistadors, anything like that. I am not trying to say that that religious people do bad things. I agree fully that Stalin and Hitler and Pol Pot and Mao did terribly bad things. It may even be that atheism was an integral part of the Marxism which led them to do terrible bad things, if indeed it was their Marxism that led them to do bad things. What interests me is that I think that there is a logical path from religion to doing terrible things, and I kind of touched on it in the last answer when I was talking about faith leading you to do things. There's a logical path that says if you really, really, really believe that your God, Allah, whoever it is, wants you to do something, you'll go to heaven, you'll go to paradise if you do it, then it's possible for an entirely logical, rational person to do hideous things. I cannot conceive of a logical path that would lead one to say, because I am an atheist, therefore it is rational for me to kill or murder or be cruel or do some horrible thing. I can easily see that there are plenty of individuals who happen to be atheists, maybe even individuals who have some other philosophy which incidentally happen to be associated with atheism. But there is no logical path. Those young men who bombed in the London subway and the buses, those 19 men who flew planes into various targets in the United States in September of 2001, they were not psychopaths. They were not downtrodden, ignorant people. They were well-educated, rational people who passionately believed they were right. They thought they were righteous, they thought they were good. Their religion, by the lights of their religion, they were good. The same thing could be said of the hideous things done by the Taliban, the oppression of women. These people believe deeply in what they're doing, and it follows logically, once you grant them the premise of their faith, then the terrible things that they do follow logically. The terrible things that Stalin did not follow from his atheism. They followed from something horrible within him. Christopher Hitchens has made the point that Stalin was, in effect, a new Tsar of a country which, for centuries, had been brought up to believe that there was a semi-divine king, the Tsar, and it would have been madness for Stalin not to have exploited this cringing loyalty in the peasantry that had been for centuries subjugated to the Tsars. It would have been madness for Stalin not to have done that. It would have been madness for Hitler, whether or not Hitler himself was religious, and there's some dispute about that. There's a good case to be made that Hitler was religious, but I don't care whether he was or not. The fact is that Hitler's terrible deeds were done by Christians who were I think I'll leave that. I mean, I think even that's not relevant. The point I would return to, yet again, is that you will not do terrible deeds because you are an atheist. You may, not for rational reasons, you may well, for very rational reasons, do terrible things because you are religious. That's what faith is about. That's what faith means. I suppose you could say that there was a kind of faith that motivated Hitler's followers and Stalin's followers as well, but that's a separate point.
Let's have a brief response. We do want to get through all of the topics tonight, but Dr. Lennox?
Well, I would want to argue that there's a logical path from any ideology, from any ideology that's fanatical and oppressive to the kind of behaviour you say, whether it's religion or atheistic, because atheism is a faith, of course, as well.
It's not.
Of course it is.
Well, okay.
Don't you believe it?
You're an atheist with respect to Thor and Wotan and
yes, that's
Zeus.
Right. I don't believe them, but you believe atheism.
No.
It is your faith.
I'm in exactly the same position with respect to your Yahweh, your Jehovah, whatever you call him. I'm in exactly the same position with respect to him as you are with respect to Zeus. And I cannot imagine not believing in Zeus leading one to do terrible deeds. It's exactly the same with not believing in God.
I'm going to wrap. I mean it now this time, Dr. Lennox. If we're going to get to the rest of the debate.
Yes, let's go on.
All right.
Let's go on. I think the issue has nothing to do with Zeus and so on. They're non-existent deities. The issue is to do with two alternative...
Okay.
It's to do with two alternative explanations of the universe, and each of us have our faith. I believe there is a God behind this universe. You believe the universe is all there is. The cosmos is all there is. Those are both statements of faith.
Okay.
You have evidence you believe for them.
The fifth thesis...
How could a belief in the cosmos lead you to murder?
We have a time limit, Professor and Doctor. The fifth thesis is that no one needs God to be moral. I only have one quote. It's from 226. It's short. We do not need God in order to be good or evil.
If you think about why you might need God in order to be moral, I can only think of two reasons how that might come about. You might say you need a book to tell you what's moral. Well, as for that, I sincerely hope that nobody in this room bases their morals on the Christian Bible or the Quran. Because if they do, then their morals are likely to be hideous. Needless to say, you can find some decent verses. You can find some decent verses in both the Bible and the Quran, and if you pick and choose those verses, then you can say with hindsight, this verse fits in with my view of what's moral, that verse doesn't, so I'm going to ignore that verse and choose this verse. But you didn't need the Bible in order to do that picking and choosing. You did the picking and choosing on the basis of something else, something which we all have in common, whether we are religious or not. We're all, to a greater or lesser extent, moral, some of us more so than others. Whether we're moral or not has nothing to do with whether we read the Bible. Some people are kind, some people are sympathetic, some people care about suffering, other people don't. It has nothing to do with the Bible. The other reason why you might need religion in order to be moral is that you are either afraid of God, you're afraid if you're not moral you'll get punished, or you're trying to suck up to God and be good so that you'll get a reward. Neither of those two is a very noble reason to be good, to say the least. Now, you might say that that forces me into a challenge. How do I know what's moral? Well, I don't on the whole, but the point I want to make is that there does seem to be a kind of universal human acceptance that certain things are right and other things are not. If you look cross-culturally, look at anthropological findings on different cultures, you'll find there's a kind of agreement that certain things are wrong and other things are right. There's disagreement in detail. The golden rule, do as you would be done by. Do unto others what you would expect them to do to you. This is a very, very widespread